The rain fell softly over the slave market, mixing with the dirt and blood on the ground. Rows of metal cages lined the streets, each one filled with broken beings from different worlds. The smell of rust, oil, and fear hung in the air. Traders shouted prices, buyers bargained, and the sound of chains echoed between the walls. It was a place where hope came to die. Inside one of the cages sat Rhea, a woman from the Serani race. Her silver-blue skin shimmered faintly under the flickering lights, and soft white patterns traced down her cheeks. Once, her people were known for grace and wisdom, but now they were sold like animals. Her long hair was tangled, her eyes dull. She didn't cry anymore. She had no tears left. A sign hung outside her cage. It read, "Infertile, unfit for breeding, sold cheap." She had been labeled like that for years. The humans who ruled the colonies no longer saw her kind as equals. They called them relics of the old war. The Serani had lost everything, their homeworld, their pride, their future. The humans had won the war and now they owned the peace. Rhea had been sold before, used for labor, passed around, then discarded when her infertility was discovered. It was not her fault. The war had destroyed her people's ability to reproduce. Science had turned them into a dying race. To the humans, that made her worthless. To her own heart, it made her hollow. The traders laughed as they passed her cage. "That one's still here? Maybe sell her for scraps," one said. Another smirked. "Pretty, though. Shame she's broken." She didn't react. She sat still, her hands resting on her knees, staring at the floor. Inside, she told herself it didn't matter. Nothing mattered anymore. Then one voice cut through the noise. "How much for her?" It wasn't loud, but it made the trader pause. Rhea looked up. Standing before her cage was a tall human man. His clothes were simple, worn from work. His hands looked rough, his boots caked with dust. He had calm gray eyes that didn't shine with cruelty or greed, only quiet thought. The trader laughed. "You don't want that one, rancher. She's useless, infertile, can't breed, can't even fight. A waste of space." The man didn't blink. I asked how much. The trader rolled his eyes. 200 credits. Take her off my hands." Without another word, the man, Eli Mercer, reached into his coat and pulled out a credit chip. The trader took it with a grin and unlocked the cage. "She's all yours. Don't come crying to me when she doesn't work out." The door swung open with a creak. Rhea didn't move. She had been sold before. Kindness was a trick she had seen too often. Eli crouched in front of her, his voice calm. "You can walk. I'm not going to hurt you." She hesitated, studying his face. There was no threat in his eyes, only quiet patience. Slowly she stood, chains rattling around her wrists. The rain dripped down her face as she stepped out of the cage. Eli took off his coat and draped it over her shoulders. "Let's go," he said softly. Rhea followed him through the muddy street, still confused. No one had ever treated her like that. When they reached his small transport ship, she finally asked in a trembling voice, "Why did you buy me?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Didn't like how they looked at you," he said simply. No one deserves to be caged. She didn't understand. She waited for the command, for the cruelty, for the truth to show itself. But it never came. As the ship rose into the gray sky, Rhea stared out the window. The slave market grew smaller behind them until it was just a dark stain in the rain. She felt something strange in her chest, something she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't peace. It was something fragile, something dangerous. It was hope. And as Eli piloted the ship toward the wide red plains of his distant ranch, Rhea whispered to herself, "Humans are strange, but deep inside, for the first time in a very long time, she wanted to believe that maybe not all of them were monsters." The transport ship landed on a quiet world painted in shades of red and gold. Endless plains stretched beneath a wide open sky, and the wind carried the soft scent of dust and grass. To Rhea, it was strange and beautiful. After years of cages and steel walls, the sight of open land made her heart ache in ways she didn't understand. Eli Mercer stepped out first, his boots crunching against the dry earth. "Welcome to my home," he said simply. Rhea followed, her bare feet touching the warm soil. It felt alive beneath her toes. She looked around. There was a small wooden house, a few sheds, and far in the distance, hundreds of horned creatures grazing lazily under the sun. The ranch was peaceful, almost too peaceful. Eli led her to the porch and handed her a towel. "You can clean up inside," he said. "There's food on the table." She hesitated at the doorway, unsure. No one had ever offered her food without shouting first. She expected a command, an order, or a chain. But Eli simply walked away toward the stables, leaving her alone. Inside the small house, the air smelled of wood and old leather. A soft fire burned in the corner. Rhea sat down slowly, touching the chair like it might vanish. On the table was a plate of bread, fruit, and a bowl of soup. Her stomach growled, but she didn't move right away. Her mind told her it might be a trick. Still, after a long moment, she picked up the spoon and began to eat. The taste was simple, warm, human. She hadn't eaten real food in years. When Eli returned later, she stood quickly. "Should I clean?" she asked quietly. "Work for the food?" He shook his head. "No, not today. You need rest." His calm tone confused her more than cruelty ever had. "But you bought me," she whispered. Eli leaned on the doorframe, wiping sweat from his brow. "I didn't buy you to work. I just couldn't leave you there." Rhea stared at him, searching his face for lies. There were none. His eyes were tired but kind, the kind of eyes that had seen too much pain and still chose gentleness. Days turned into weeks. Rhea started helping around the ranch, not because he asked her to, but because she wanted to. She cleaned, carried water, repaired fences. Eli tried to stop her, but she only smiled softly and said, "I am used to working." At first they spoke little. Eli respected her silence and she respected his space, but over time words found their way between them. He told her about the war, about losing his wife to illness, about how the galaxy had turned bitter. She listened quietly, her hands always busy with small tasks. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in deep orange light, she asked, "Why do you live alone?" Eli looked out over the plains. "Because I couldn't save anyone before," he said quietly. "Now I just try to keep what's left alive." His words stayed in her mind long after. That night, she stood outside under the stars, the same stars her people once studied and worshipped. She wondered if any other Serani still looked up at them. Maybe not. Maybe she was the last. Eli found her there, staring at the sky. "Can't sleep?" he asked gently. "I dream of cages," she said softly. "Even when I am free." He nodded. "Freedom takes time to feel real." She looked at him then, really looked. This human who worked with his hands, who spoke softly but carried deep sorrow in his eyes. He was nothing like the soldiers who had destroyed her world. He was different. That night, Rhea slept without fear for the first time in years. The house was small, the wind cold, but she felt safe. When morning came, she stepped outside and saw Eli feeding the animals. He looked up and smiled. "Morning, Rhea," she smiled back, small, shy, but real. Something had changed between them, something quiet and fragile. For the first time since the war, Rhea felt she wasn't just surviving. She was living, and as the sun rose over the red plains, the broken alien woman and the lonely human rancher began a new chapter, two lost souls finding warmth in the ruins of a cold galaxy. Months passed quietly on the red plains. Rhea had begun to smile again, though she never noticed it herself. She moved through Eli's ranch with gentle grace, feeding animals, fixing small tools, helping with repairs. The days were long, but they were peaceful. And for the first time in years, peace didn't feel like a lie. Eli never treated her like property. He didn't order her around, didn't raise his voice. He taught her things instead, how to ride the local beasts, how to plant seed pods, how to patch torn fences. She learned to laugh when the animals refused to listen, and sometimes he laughed with her. At night they would sit by the fire. He would tell stories of Earth, the blue oceans, the endless forests, the mountains capped with snow. She listened like a child hearing magic. Her world had once been beautiful too, she said, until war took it all. There was silence between them after that. But it was not an empty silence, it was a comfortable one. Then one morning, Rhea didn't wake up early like she always did. Eli found her lying on the ground outside, pale and shaking. Panic filled his chest. He rushed to her side, lifted her in his arms, and carried her inside. "Rhea, hey, stay with me," he said, voice trembling. Her breathing was uneven, her skin glowing faintly beneath the surface, as if light was trapped inside her veins. Her fingers clutched his sleeve weakly. "Something's wrong," she whispered. Eli placed her on the bed and grabbed a scanner from the old med kit. It was ancient, but still worked. He ran the scanner over her body, eyes narrowing as strange readings flashed across the screen. The machine beeped and displayed words that made no sense to him. But Rhea understood. Her hands flew to her stomach, her eyes wide with shock. "No," she breathed. "That's not possible. What is it?" Eli asked, confused and scared. She looked at him, voice trembling. "I'm pregnant." Eli froze. The word hung in the air like thunder. "That can't be," she whispered again, tears forming in her eyes. "My kind, we can't have children. The humans destroyed that part of us during the war. They made sure we would die out." Eli knelt beside her, unsure what to say. Maybe the machine's wrong? But Rhea shook her head slowly. Her heartbeat, her glow, she knew her body. And it told her the impossible had happened. A Serani carrying life again. She pressed a trembling hand to her belly. This shouldn't be real." Eli placed his hand gently over hers. "Maybe it's not about what should be," he said softly. "Maybe it's about what's meant to be." His voice was calm, but his eyes held something deeper. Wonder, fear, hope. Rhea looked at him and felt her world tilt. For years she had believed her people were cursed, that she would die alone, a broken echo of her race. But now inside her, life had begun to grow. Life that shouldn't exist, and the father. Her heart skipped a beat. The warmth that filled her chest when she thought of Eli wasn't something she had allowed herself to feel. He had been kind, gentle, protective. He had treated her like a person when no one else would. And now somehow they were bound by something far greater. Tears ran down her cheeks. "If they find out," she whispered, "they'll come for me. For the child." Eli looked at her with quiet determination. "Then they'll have to go through me first." There was strength in his voice, the kind that made her believe him. That night, Rhea sat by the window, her hands resting over her stomach, watching the stars above. The air outside was calm, the ranch silent. Eli had fallen asleep in the chair beside her, keeping watch like a guardian. She whispered softly to the stars, "If there are gods out there, thank you. Thank you for this small miracle." Her reflection in the window showed a woman who had once been broken, now carrying something brighter than hope itself. And deep inside her, the faint spark of life pulsed in rhythm with her heart, a secret that could change everything. Rhea didn't know what the future held. But one thing was certain, she was no longer empty. She was alive. She was whole. And for the first time in her life, she had something worth fighting for. The seasons changed quietly on the red plains. Rhea's belly began to grow, and with it, so did Eli's quiet smile. The ranch became brighter, filled with new laughter, new dreams. Every morning, Eli brought her warm tea made from local herbs. Every night, he sat by her side, reading old books or just listening to the wind. For the first time in her life, Rhea wasn't just surviving. She was waiting for something beautiful. She often stood outside at sunset, one hand resting gently on her stomach, feeling the tiny movements inside. A new life, a new beginning. Eli built a small crib out of polished wood. His rough hands worked carefully, smoothing every edge. When Rhea asked him why he was putting so much care into it, he smiled shyly. "Because it's for something precious," he said. Rhea looked at him for a long time, her eyes full of warmth. In another life, she thought, maybe she and this human would have been something more than just friends. But even if they never said the words, they both felt it, something deep, silent, and true. But peace is fragile, and happiness for those who have suffered too long never lasts forever. One night, Rhea woke up to the sound of thunder, not from the sky but from engines. She stepped outside and froze. In the distance, lights cut across the plains, ships fast and low heading toward the ranch. Her heart began to race. She knew those ships, raiders, human scavengers who hunted the weak, selling slaves and stolen goods across the colonies. "Eli," she shouted, running inside. He was already awake, pulling on his boots, loading his old rifle. "I see them," he said grimly. "Get inside, Rhea, lock the door." She shook her head. "They're after me." "They know." Eli's jaw tightened. "Then they'll have to kill me first." The ground shook as the ships landed near the fields. Armed men stepped out, their armor shining under the moonlight. One of them shouted through a speaker, "Give us the Serani woman, rancher. You have something valuable. Hand her over and live." Rhea's blood turned cold. They had found out about her pregnancy. The Serani race had been declared extinct, infertile, but if one could carry a child, she was worth more than gold. Eli stood on the porch, rifle in hand. "You'll get nothing from me," he yelled. Blaster fire filled the night. The air burned with heat and smoke. Eli fought fiercely, taking cover behind the fence posts, firing back with deadly precision. Rhea tried to help, but Eli shouted for her to stay inside. She could only watch through the window, heartbreaking, as her home turned into a battlefield. A stray blast hit the house, sending sparks across the floor. The crib Eli had built shattered into pieces. Rhea screamed. She ran to the door, but Eli was already on the ground, his body crumpling beside the burning fence. "Eli," she cried, running to him. His blood soaked into the red earth. He looked up at her with weak eyes, still trying to smile. "Rhea, run," he whispered. "Protect the child." Tears streamed down her face as she held him close. "No, please, don't leave me." But his eyes slowly closed, his breath fading into silence. The raiders pulled her away, chaining her wrists. She screamed and fought, but they dragged her toward the ship. Smoke filled the sky. The ranch, their home, was burning behind her. As the ship lifted off, she looked down one last time. The plane stretched endlessly, glowing orange under the firelight. Eli's body lay still near the fence he had once built with love. Rhea pressed her hands over her stomach, sobbing quietly. "I will keep him safe," she whispered through tears. "I swear it." The stars outside blurred as the ship flew into the dark void. Her heart felt shattered, but deep within that pain something stronger began to grow. Rage, love, and determination. They could chain her again. They could take everything from her again. But they would never take this child. Because this child was a miracle, a symbol of hope, a piece of both worlds, born of love, not war, and Rhea swore that one day she would come back. No longer a slave, no longer broken, but as a mother carrying the legacy of a man who had believed in her when no one else did. Years passed. The stars changed, but Rhea never forgot the red plains or the man who had given her hope. The raiders had sold her again, far away to the dark mines of Delta Verge, a cold, dead world where the sky was always gray and the air always smelled of metal and dust. She was forced to work in tunnels filled with poison and smoke. Chains hung heavy on her wrists and guards watched from every corner. Yet even in that darkness, a small light still lived inside her, growing stronger every day. That light was her child. When the time came, Rhea gave birth alone in the cold shadows of the mine. She bit her lips to keep from screaming, afraid the guards would hear. When the baby finally came, she held him close, trembling with shock and love. He had soft skin, pale like Eli's, but faint silver lines glowed along his cheeks like hers. His eyes opened bright and blue, and for a moment she could almost see Eli smiling through them. Rhea cried quietly. "Elias," she whispered. "Your name will be Elias." The guards found out soon after. They laughed cruelly. "A half-breed? A mistake?" They mocked. The galaxy doesn't need another mixed creature. But Rhea didn't listen. She held her son tightly, whispering to him every night. "You are not a mistake. You are proof that love can survive war." Years passed in that dark place. The boy grew, strong and curious. He asked questions about everything, the stars, the sky, the surface above. Rhea told him stories every night, stories about a ranch under a red sun, about green fields, and a kind man named Eli who once saved her from a cage. "Was he my father?" Elias asked one night, his voice small. Rhea smiled through her tears. "Yes, he was brave and gentle. He believed the world could still be kind." "Then I'll be brave too," the boy said. Like him, Rhea touched his cheek softly. "You already are." But the mines were not safe. The guards had started to notice the boy's strength, how quickly he healed, how fast he learned. He was different, and that made them afraid. One night, Rhea overheard them whispering, "Half-breeds don't survive long. Maybe we should sell him before he gets older." Fear gripped her heart. She knew what they meant. She had seen what they did to children before. That night she decided they would run. Rhea spent weeks planning the escape. She watched the guard shifts, studied the tunnels, and waited for the right moment. Elias, now 10 years old, was brave and clever. He found an old access card from a drunk guard and hid it under a rock. When the time came, they moved like shadows. They slipped past the guards, down through a narrow tunnel that led to the surface. The alarm started soon after, red lights flashing, sirens screaming, but they didn't stop. Rhea's body ached, her lungs burned, but she kept running. "Don't look back, Elias," she cried. "Keep running, my son." They reached the surface just as the dawn broke. For the first time in his life, Elias saw the open sky. He stopped for a second, eyes wide in wonder. "It's beautiful," he whispered. Rhea smiled weakly. "Yes, it is." They stole a small cargo ship from the raiders' hangar and launched into the stars. Rhea's body was weak, wounded from the escape, but her heart was alive again. The stars outside reminded her of the stories she once told Eli. The same stars under which they had lived and loved. As Elias sat beside her, staring at the endless space, Rhea whispered softly, "We're going home." He looked at her with confusion. "Home?" She nodded, tears filling her eyes. "To the Red Plains. To your father's ranch." Elias smiled, and in that smile, Rhea saw both past and future, the love she had lost and the hope she had found again. The engines roared. The stars stretched into lines and the ship vanished into the deep. Rhea held her son close, whispering, "No cage will ever hold us again." For the first time in years, she felt free, not because the chains were gone, but because she carried Eli's memory and their child's future within her heart. She had lost everything once. Now she had something worth fighting for again. The stars looked endless as the small cargo ship drifted through the dark sea of space. Rhea sat in the pilot's seat, her trembling hands gripping the controls. Her wound still burned, but she refused to rest. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the mines, the guards, and the red alarms flashing behind them. Beside her sat Elias, her son, wide-eyed and silent. The boy had never seen the stars like this before, free, open, shining like 1,000 dreams calling to him. "Are they following us, Mother?" he asked softly. Rhea glanced at the radar. A small red dot blinked at the edge of the screen. "Yes," she said honestly. "They won't let us go easily." Elias swallowed, his small hands tightening on the seatbelt. "Will they hurt us again?" Rhea looked at him and smiled faintly. "Not if I can stop them." She adjusted the controls, pushing the ship toward a hidden route between asteroid belts. The engines roared as rocks drifted past the windows, some so close they scraped the hull. The boy gasped every time a huge stone spun by, but Rhea stayed calm, guiding them with skill she had learned from years of watching others fly. The Raiders' ship appeared on the radar again, closer now. A message buzzed through the speakers. "Rhea, surrender the child," a harsh voice said. "You can't escape. That half-breed belongs to us." Her fingers clenched. For a moment she said nothing. Then she pressed the comm button and spoke, her voice calm but cold. "He belongs to no one." The man on the other side laughed. "Then you both die." A beam of light shot past their ship, burning across the wing. The cockpit shook violently, alarm screamed. Elias cried out, gripping his mother's arm. "Hold on!" Rhea shouted, steering sharply. The ship dove through the debris, spinning between asteroids. Another shot missed them by inches. Sparks filled the cockpit, smoke rising from a damaged panel. Rhea's vision blurred for a moment from exhaustion, but she forced herself to focus. "Come on, girl," she whispered to the ship. "Just a little more." The boy turned to her. "Mother, what if we crash?" She looked at him and smiled faintly. "Then we'll fall together, but I won't let them take you." She pressed a final sequence on the console, an old emergency jump code. The ship's core began to glow, light filling the cabin. The pursuing ship fired one last time, but before the blast could hit, Rhea's ship vanished into hyperspace. The world turned white. When they emerged, silence filled the cockpit. The stars were calm again, distant and peaceful. The ship floated gently above a familiar planet, red plains glowing beneath a golden sun. Rhea felt her heart stop. It was Earth's frontier colony, Eli's home. The ranch, she almost couldn't breathe. "We made it," she whispered. "We're home." Elias looked down through the window, amazed. "It's beautiful," he said softly. "Is this where Father lived?" Rhea nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Yes, my love. This is where he waited for me." The ship descended slowly, landing near the old wooden fences she remembered so well. The door opened with a hiss and warm wind rushed inside. She stepped out first, the air filling her lungs like life itself. She knelt down, pressing her palm to the dirt. The red soil felt warm, alive. It was the same ground Eli once worked with his hands, the same place she had stood, afraid and broken all those years ago. Now she stood strong, with her son beside her. Rhea looked at Elias, who gazed around with wonder. "This is where your father dreamed of peace," she said. "And now you'll see it too." The boy smiled, sunlight shining on his silver-marked face. "Then let's build it again, Mother." Rhea's chest tightened with pride. Yes, she whispered. We'll build it again. But deep inside she knew their peace wouldn't last long. The raiders would come looking. The galaxy never forgave escapees. Still, for that single golden moment, she allowed herself to believe in safety. Believe that maybe, just maybe, she had brought hope home again. As the sun set behind the hills, Rhea stood at the edge of the ranch holding her son's hand. The wind carried the smell of grass and memory. She whispered into the wind, Eli, I kept my promise, and for the first time in years, she felt him there, his warmth, his strength, and his love, carried on the evening breeze. The morning sun rose over the red plains, painting the land in gold and fire. Rhea stood outside the small wooden house, her hands resting on the old fence Eli once built. The wood was cracked, the nails rusted, but it still stood strong, just like her. Elias ran through the fields, his laughter echoing across the open sky. He was growing fast, stronger each day, his steps full of energy and life. When Rhea looked at him, she saw both of them in him, Eli's courage, her strength, and something greater, a hope that belonged to both worlds. But deep in her heart, she knew peace never lasted long. That evening, the sky darkened. A strange hum filled the air, a sound she hadn't heard in years. The ground trembled slightly. Rhea's smile faded. She turned her eyes toward the horizon. There they were, 3 black ships, descending like vultures from the clouds. The raiders had found them. Elias ran to her, frightened. Mother, what's happening? Rhea knelt and grabbed his shoulders gently. Her voice was calm, though her heart raced. Listen to me, Elias, you need to hide in the barn. Stay quiet until I come for you, But no, my son. Please, you are my life. I won't lose you now. The boy hesitated, his eyes filling with tears. You'll come back? Rhea forced a smile. Always. She kissed his forehead and pushed him toward the barn. Then she turned to face the sky. The ships landed near the edge of the ranch, dust and wind swirling in violent waves. The lead raider stepped out, a tall, scarred man in dark armor. His voice was cold and cruel. You thought you could run forever, alien? He sneered. The child belongs to us. Rhea stood tall, her silver markings glowing faintly in the fading light. He belongs to no one, she said quietly. He is free. The man laughed, raising his weapon. Then you'll die for your foolishness. Blaster fire cut through the air. Rhea dove behind the fence, her heart pounding. She found Eli's old rifle still resting near the house, rusted but working. She grabbed it, memories flashing through her mind. Eli teaching her how to aim, how to breathe, how to survive. She fired once. The shot hit a raider square in the chest, dropping him instantly. The others shouted, spreading out. The sound of battle filled the peaceful fields. Rhea moved like a storm, fast, focused, fierce. She had spent years in chains, years fighting to protect a child born from love. She would not let them take him. Not again, but there were too many. A blast hit her shoulder, spinning her to the ground. Pain burned through her body, but she pushed herself up, bleeding, gasping, refusing to give up. From the barn, Elias watched in horror. He couldn't stay hidden anymore. Something inside him, a fire, woke up. His mother's pain, his father's memory. Everything inside him exploded like light. He ran out, his small hands glowing faintly with the strange energy that came from both his bloodlines. The raiders saw him and froze. What is that? One of them shouted. Elias raised his hand and a wave of energy rippled outward, knocking the raiders back. The ground cracked under his feet, the air trembling around him. He didn't understand how he was doing it. He only knew his mother needed him. Rhea looked up through her tears, whispering, Elias. My son. The boy stood in front of her, protecting her just as Eli once did. You will not hurt her, he said, his voice steady and strong. The raiders tried to fire again, but their weapons jammed, twisted by the energy around him. Then one by one they ran, terrified of what they couldn't understand. The ships lifted off, disappearing into the sky, leaving silence behind. Elias turned to his mother, his energy fading. Mother, did I do wrong? Rhea reached out, pulling him into her arms, crying softly. No, my love. You did what your father would have done. You protected what you love. They sat there together in the dirt, the stars slowly appearing above them. Rhea whispered, her voice weak but full of peace. Your father once told me humans are stubborn. They never give up. I think he was right. Elias smiled, resting his head on her shoulder. Then maybe I'm human too. Rhea closed her eyes and smiled through her tears. Yes, my son, you are human. And so much more. As night fell over the ranch, the wind carried the smell of grass and dust. The sky shimmered with stars, each one shining like a promise kept. The infertile alien had once been sold like an object. But now she sat beneath the same sky with a son born of love, strength and freedom. And somewhere in the stars above, Eli's spirit smiled because humanity had once again proven what it truly was: unbreakable.